Hey guys, Carson here with Studio McKay, and in this video I want to walk you guys through how I would typically color grade a commercial like the one that I just released. So if you want to check out that ad, go ahead and click the link in the description below so you can see the ad, and then I'll show you guys how I color grade the commercial. So let's jump into it. All right, so we're gonna be working in DaVinci Resolve. Now, a lot of what we're gonna be doing you can do in Premiere Pro and Final Cut, but for the purposes of this tutorial, I'll just be doing it in DaVinci Resolve. So this image looks pretty good in terms of color accuracy, so I'm fairly happy with that. It is a little bit flat, a little bit muted, low saturation, so I really wanna bring out these skin tones, and I want to take down these highlights. You can see we've got a lot of highlights in our waveform sitting at 100%, and in most Hollywood movies, we see these around 80 to 90% on our waveform. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and take my gain, and I'm just gonna bring that white point down right around that 90 mark. And then we are gonna do some more stuff in this node, but we're gonna go ahead and create just a couple more nodes here. Let's just do 4 more. And we're gonna go ahead and label this first node correction. Cool. Now in this next node, I'm gonna go ahead and use some of the LUT presets that I've developed, which you guys can check out using the link in the description. And I'm gonna go ahead and first put on Bridgeport. This one looks pretty good, though it is kind of strong. So I'm gonna go ahead and come under my key output here and bring down that intensity just to bring the image back a little bit more. Let's go somewhere around 350-ish. That looks pretty good. Now on this next node, I'm gonna go ahead and layer Sea Glass on top of Bridgeport. The way these 3 LUTs are set up is they're designed to stack them so that you can remix them and create unique looks. So as you can see, we've already created kind of a look here. So I'm gonna go ahead and bring down the key output on this one as well. Somewhere right about there. Okay, now we're gonna come back to our correction node, and I'm gonna bring up these shadows just a bit here. Somewhere right around there. Brought up the higher shadows or lower midtones, and now I'm going to bring down these areas near the black point just a little bit to add some contrast here. Maybe bring that black point in a little bit. Something like that's looking pretty good. Bring up those highlights. Bring the white point right back down. Put a point right here, right in our midtones. And bring these shadows back down just a little bit because we're just trying to finesse the contrast so we get it to look the way we want it. Now I'm going to go ahead and bring these midtones up just a little bit, maybe bring them down, take our highlights, bring those right back down a little bit here. And this is looking pretty good. So as you can see, we've come a long way from where we started. I'll go ahead and disable these nodes. So there's our before, there's our after, a pretty solid look right there. Now what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and come to these last 2 nodes, and I'm going to make this image look just a little bit more like it was shot on an anamorphic lens. Since I shot on a spherical lens, you can see that all the bokeh is very just clinically clean and uniform. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and come to my radial blur, drop that on the 4th node. Now this is looking kind of wild, kind of funky, so I'm going to go ahead and use a radial mask just to mask this to the edges. We'll go ahead and invert it, something like that. Make it a little bit bigger, narrow that in just a little bit bigger, somewhere right around there. And then we'll go ahead and bring down the strength of the blur, something like that. Now I'm also gonna come to my curves, just bring down these midtones just a hair, just to make it give a little bit of a natural vignette. Now for this last node, we're going to go ahead and do the same thing, except this time we're dragging the lens blur. And this time we're going to use the anamorphism control. And if we drag it to the right, we're stretching the bokeh horizontally. In this case, I want to stretch it vertically. It gives that anamorphic effect. And then we'll bring down the blur just a little bit here. And we're going to go ahead and mask this just like we did last time. And invert the mask. And then really feather the heck out of this thing and make this a little bit bigger here. Something like that looks pretty good. And now let's go ahead and close out of our effects there. And we can see if we turn off all the nodes, we can see where we started here. It looks kind of good, but still kind of flat. And then turn them all back on. We've got a solid color grade that makes it just look that much more professional. So in our second shot here, we do have a couple of issues to fix. So let's start creating a few nodes here. And on this first node, the very first thing I want to do is just play around with my curves to see how much we can recover from these shadows. My friend here was standing in the shadows and the background is really blown out. So there's a ton of contrast in this image and we really need to bring him out of these shadows a little bit more. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to reset this curve and we're going to come to our effects and use the dehaze effect. We'll drag dehaze onto the first node here. Looks kind of crazy with all this saturation going on. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and bring our shadows way up and then take our highlights and play around with those a little bit. Maybe bring that down here a little bit. And then now this is looking crazy like I said earlier. So what we're going to do is we're going to come to our saturation and our color boost. We'll play around with these to see which one will get rid of some of this excess color. So by bringing down that color boost, we've really brought the colors back to a neutral place. If we turn this node off and back on, you can see we've gotten some more definition in his face here. So in the next node, what we're gonna do is bring up the shadows in our curve somewhere right around there. Bring our black point back in a little bit here. Finesse the shadows just a little bit more. Bring up our midtones and bring up those highlights and flatten out those highlights to give a nicer, softer highlight roll off. We'll come back to our primaries here, and we're going to introduce a little bit of color boost, something just like that. Now I want to balance out some of the colors in here, so I'm going to go ahead and warm up these shadows a little bit. Somewhere right around there is looking pretty good. And then on this node, I'm going to go ahead and check and see which one of these LUTs is going to look the best. So I think I'm going to stick with the Bridgeport LUT again and bring down the key output. Somewhere right around there looks pretty good. And then on these other nodes, we're just going to go ahead and copy our effects from here. And boom, now here is the before and the after. So we've come a long way from where we started. We really recovered a lot of the detail in his face, and we've really made this image look a lot better, giving it the anamorphic bokeh stretch in the corners. And now let's move on to the last clip. All right, the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna leave this first node alone in case we need to make any adjustments before our LUTs. So in the second node, I'm gonna go ahead and drag on the Bridgeport LUT again. And on the third node, I'm gonna go ahead and drag on the Sea Glass LUT, and then we'll bring down the intensity of both of these. I'm gonna go over to the key output and bring this wave down. Here we go, right around 300-ish. And then on Sea Glass, bring that right back down around the same amount, and maybe increase the Bridgeport LUT just a little bit. Now, what I am noticing is there's a really harsh highlight roll off in her shirt here, so that's why we have this first node right here. We're gonna come over into our curves. We're gonna bring our white point down just a little bit, bring those highlights up, somewhere right around there. Maybe bring up those midtones a little bit, not too much. Just trying to get rid of that harsh highlight roll off. Let's turn this off and back on, looking a bit better. Maybe bring that white point down just a little bit more. Somewhere right around there looks pretty good. And then again, we're just gonna go ahead and add that bokeh stretch. All right, and something like that looks pretty good. So if we go ahead and turn off all of our adjustments, we can see where we started out. And if we turn them back on, we can see where we've ended up. All three of these clips are significantly better than they were when we started. And so I think we've done a really good job recovering some of the detail in this clip, really giving this clip a good solid cinematic look, and then recreating a similar look on this clip. All right, so that's my process of how I color corrected and color graded this ad that you saw. And if you guys want to learn more about color correction and color grading, I've got a course, I'll link it below. It's on Skillshare. Go ahead and click that link to get a full month free of Skillshare. This is not sponsored. I genuinely love their platform. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. If you have any questions, go ahead and let me know in the comments. I'll see you guys later.